Here's your Uniblast, and first up, we head outside for all the natural world has to offer. If you remember the short-lived YouTube show, you'll remember a story about how puffins' beaks glow under UV light, and that they had to make special sunglasses in order to protect their eyes while they tested it. Well, now McGill University has found another interesting aspect of their beaks, namely cooling. Now this is the tufted puffin that is native to the North Pacific, so temperature control is pretty important. The McGill researchers recorded the beaks and found it accounted for almost 1/5 of the total heat exchange, despite only being 6% of the bird's total surface area. Why would this be though? Well, flight is extraordinarily taxing. The example they use is a puffin's close relative, the thick-billed murre, which uses 31 times the energy when flying as opposed to resting. This effort produces significant heat, so the puffin's bill allows them to cool quickly. The researchers said this was an example of exaptation, where an external structure gains additional functions. This was previously seen in how the desert hare grew bigger ears to help them cool down. They further highlighted just how useful this feature was to the puffins due to the fact the birds can't sweat, and this was a novel solution to the problem of thermoregulation in freezing regions. Widespread bee death is a story I'm sure we have all heard about, but a new study at the University of Illinois found that even hives that thrive during the summer can run into trouble from August onwards. The researchers placed the hives next to soybeans in Iowa and saw that they had good stores of honey built up. But, as Professor of Ecology Amy Toth said, then they all just crashed and burned at the end of the year. Some of the hives were able to be brought back from the brink by being relocated to reconstructed prairies that had late-blooming flowers. This shows a more nuanced view of agriculture's role in bee populations. Entomology professor Adam Dozal saw how over the whole year, 60% of their entire pollen collection was from clover. With over 80% of Iowa being agricultural land, such as soybeans and corn, this showed that the most plentiful plants are not the preferred plants for bees. However, once July ends and the soybeans and clovers stop blooming, the bees quickly run out of available food and begin eating their stores. The researchers say not to move the bees to prairies, as they don't have enough food for the hives. However, they suggest that installing strips of reconstructed prairies could save the hives. The prairies could also have other benefits, such as reducing erosion and preventing nutrients getting into waterways. Anime and zoos might be odd bedfellows for animal conservation, but the University of Tokyo has tracked how they increase not only the interest in animals, but also increase funds for conservation following an appearance of personified animals in the Kimono Friends show. Kimono Friends is a 30-minute anime where a lone girl has to travel an empty world with only animals to help her navigate. Of course, this being an anime, the animals are all women in animal costumes. It was popular enough to franchise into games, merchandise, and be picked up for another season. But let's get back to the real animals. Comparing the 18 months before and after it began airing, there was an increase of just under 4.7 million Google searches and 1 million Wikipedia page views for the animal species that were featured. Assistant Professor Yuya Fukano said the data clearly shows Kimono Friends has a positive effect on public interest in wildlife, regardless of the species' conservation status. But did this translate into money? Well, they looked at donations at 3 of Tokyo's zoos and found that the main character species received an increase in the number of financial supporters they had. Now, the researchers are quick to highlight that it is not always in the best interest of the animals to be in the spotlight, with the example of poaching clownfish happening after Finding Nemo came out. Still, I hope this can go further to provide animals with the help and support they need. Now to look at the patch notes for our very own body. It's everything to do with human biology. Being able to quit smoking is a goal for millions of people a year. However, its difficulty is renowned. But thanks to a study out of the University of Toronto, smokers might be getting a little help. Taryn Greeder has managed to identify the brain cells that are responsible for the initial disgusting sensation people get when they first start out smoking. Grieder found that the sections responsible for the pleasure of cigarette smoking and aversion were located in two different areas. However, Grieder's previous research discovered that those under stress would find their first cigarette more rewarding, showing that there are many factors in how people are affected by smoking. The area that she was most focused on is the ventral tegmental area, or VTA, and the VTA changes over time depending on how long people smoke for. The hope is that Grieder will be able to create a drug similar to one called antabuse, which causes alcoholics to suffer from nausea when they drink, this aversion helping them to quit. Until that time comes, I wish the best of luck to anyone trying to quit smoking. Over the last few years, there has been an influx of viruses that have caught headlines around the world. Zika, Ebola, and SARS, for example. But now Edinburgh University has helped to develop a system that would model the viruses and show how they will spread and allow us to predict their virulence. The researchers found that if a virus infected multiple organs, the nervous system, or the kidneys, then it was likely to be of a much higher virulence. Liam Brearley, a PhD student from Liverpool working at Edinburgh, said, "When a new virus or disease is discovered or emerges, it is currently hard to predict how harmful it will be and what impact it will have on populations worldwide. Combining more accurate predictions of virus severity with genetic information could improve the planning and preparedness of public health strategies in the future." The researchers hope that by understanding these risk factors, they could also help to understand how these viruses evolve and the mechanisms that allow them to be so virulent. The ability to communicate is perhaps the greatest development to have ever happened to humans. But there are, of course, many ailments that can destroy this vital process. LMU linguist Julia Büttner-Kunert set out to understand the problems that the brains of people who suffer from dementia or other traumatic brain injuries have when trying to communicate. Over the last 7 years, and in conjunction with the German Federal Ministry of Education and Research, they came up with a language-based screening procedure. This procedure allows her to categorize the sufferer's retained knowledge of something called pragmatics. From what I understand from the article, this has to do with inferring information that is keyed into conversations. The example they supplied was that when someone says, "there's a draft," it really means, "please close the window." This understanding of the underlying context can often be lost due to neurological damage. They hope to take this screening process and test 240 people, with half being a control and the others having neurological conditions, so that new forms of therapy can be developed. The ultimate goal would be to use this screening process to gain insight into how people understand the central message that is conveyed in text or spoken. However, as the project is expected to last for another 3 years, this could be a long time coming. Now to look at everything that's new in physics and engineering. And we start off with a new process in 3D printing. Now if you're anything like me, you are thinking of plastic, but not this time though. ETH Zurich have created a new process that allows them to create very complex and porous structures out of glass. However, the basic idea is called stereolithography, which was originally created in the 1980s. The process uses a glass to which plastic and organic molecules are bonded to. They are then subjected to a UV light that irradiates the resin and causes it to harden. Also, by changing the intensity of UV light, they can change how porous the material is and build it up layer by layer. This was discovered completely by accident, but it allowed them to alter the mixture to see what works best. This included adding silica or borate to the mixture, which not only allowed them to have finer control over the structure, but to use different types of glass as well. Once it has hardened, all you need to do is fire the blank to burn off the resin structure to reveal the intricate glass piece inside. They have some beautiful pieces on their website, so check out the show notes for the links. While the Big Bang holds the record for the biggest explosion ever, Gammaray bursts are a solid second-place contender. But they have remained elusive as they can release energy equal to the entire lifetime output of our Sun in a matter of seconds. But now, thanks to an international team which included University College London physicists, we have now detected a gamma ray burst and within 22 seconds seen the high energy afterglow after such an event. See, gamma ray bursts typically happen when a massive star collapses or when black holes or neutron stars crash into each other. Such massive forces colliding releases quick pulses of gamma rays, which are the most energetic form of light. These pulses then interact with the matter around the event and causes a whole host of electromagnetic rays that can then be detected for months afterwards. The event was first seen just before 4 p.m. on January the 14th of this year. Within 22 seconds of two satellites capturing the event, the call went out around the world to astronomers so they could capture as much information as possible. Located just 7 billion light-years away, this burst was particularly close. But it was this afterglow data that tracked the changes in energy across 17 orders of magnitude that will help to change our understanding of the processes of the universe. The National University of Singapore has created a new flexible soft robot that is made out of metal. Traditionally, soft robots have been made out of paper or plastic with additional sensors and components added on. However, this increases weight and bulk. The NUS team combined metals like platinum with ash and found that the resulting mix was not only lightweight, being half the weight of paper, but retained its flexibility. They highlight that such a material as this could be extremely useful in the creation of prosthetic limbs, which could be 60% lighter but still retain complex sensors, enabling fine touch and quick information transfer. The material keeps getting better as it would also be 30% more energy efficient, is fire resistant, and can work in harsh conditions, from withstanding burns of up to 800 degrees for 5 minutes, or sending a current through material to heat it up in cold temperatures. This could prove to be quite the extremophile robot, perfect for rescue missions. How was it made? The team first soaked cellulose paper into a graphene oxide solution before dipping it into a metallic solution such as platinum. Then it is burned in an inert gas like argon at 800 degrees before a final burn of 500 degrees in open air. After that baking session, you'll have a 90 micrometer layer that would impress any of the bake-off judges. But if you want to see the next wonder material, check out their article which has a cool video so you can see it in action. If you haven't heard the term fake news over the last few years, then I must commend you. However, Cambridge have found what might be the earliest example. 3,000 years ago, there was a Babylonian story of a man called Utnapishtim who gets his community to build a massive boat for the god Ea and rounds up a lot of animals while the rest of the world drowns in a flood. Sound familiar? That's because it is likely the inspiration for the biblical story of Noah and comes from the epic of Gilgamesh. In the original tale, the god Ea tells the people to prepare for a rain of food. However, this is a trick, as the word he uses could also tell of a flood, which, of course, happens. This trick has only recently been revealed by Dr. Martin Worthington, an Assyriologist from Cambridge, who said, "With this early episode set in mythological time, the manipulation of information and language has begun. It may be the earliest ever example of fake news." He went on to say that this trick had been hidden for so long due to phonetical wordplay. Ea is clearly a master wordsmith who is able to compress multiple simultaneous meanings into one duplicitous utterance. I'm half expecting to hear Trump say he was actually Ea and that it was the best trade deal he's ever done. From those puffins earlier, we head further north to the Arctic circles and the Inuit people whose sledge dogs were a key to their success. Looking at the remains of dogs from around the area showed that the original Inuit people didn't adopt local dogs, but brought them over the Bering Strait to North America. This shows that the dogs already had the special traits that the people found useful in the freezing temperatures and that they wanted to maintain them. The researchers from Oxford University analysed 391 dog remains and saw that they were bigger with narrower craniums than native North American dogs. These dogs were the ancestors of the modern sled dogs. But when they first came, sledding was a rarity, says co-lead author Tatiana Feuerborn from the Globe Institute in Denmark and the Centre for Paleogenetics in Sweden. The growing adoption of sled dogs allowed the Inuit to hunt across many thousands of miles. But back then there were fewer breeds, and this study lets us see how these people relied upon these dogs and grew them into what they are today. From aliens to Bigfoot to Pizzagate, Conspiracy theories have traditionally been the domain of the less than credible tinfoil chapeau sort. However, the Australian National University has delved into the 2 billion comments made in the conspiracy subreddit and found that the inhabitants were terrifyingly normal. Dr. Colin Klein, lead author of the study, highlighted that many are engaged in more sensible interest, saying, for example, conspiracy theories about police abuse of power are common. That's not so crazy. These people might believe false things, but with good reason, because similar things have happened in the past. He goes on to say that low-level theorizing goes on a lot in everyday life. I'm inclined to think the stuff you see online is just a strong outgrowth of that. This suggests a more active process where people are seeking out sympathetic communities. This process of finding like-minded people is something we see a lot of on the internet. So, we're all just looking for a friend, I guess. Well, that's what they want you to think. Now, before we get to the and finally, I can only say thank you for listening. If you want to see the whole intake with other stories from the top 50 universities, check out the Uniblast subreddit. I'm always wanting feedback, so please leave comments and reviews. Links are below if you want to contact me directly. And finally, now if the previous story about anime didn't clue you in, I'm a big old nerd, and I might as well finish on another story, this time about gaming. Now we're talking about board games and card games, and I think the fact that we're currently in the golden age of board games means that it's totally above board. Edinburgh University found that those who played these games were more likely to stay mentally sharp in later life. Using an intelligence test from when they were 11 years old and accounting for other factors like socioeconomic status, educational and lifestyle factors, the researchers were able to give the advice that it is good to be engaged with various activities throughout life, with this study pointing directly towards the protective capabilities of non-digital games. The researchers are interested to find out if different games have different potency. Surely Monopoly would only shorten life expectancy though. I know I've almost been murdered after a game. That's all for this week. I hope you enjoyed, and apologies for anything or anyone's name I got wrong. Unfortunately, I'm no expert.